What is up, everybody? NFT Pirates back at you again, here with the one and only Trevor. My gosh, it's been a little while. Everybody knows whose this is. Dude, it's good to see you. How are you?
I'm great. I'm excited to be here. I love doing these. This is always very fun, and I like that I can do it from this position as like recovering Veve developer and now Tomorrowland NFT producer, product manager, whatever we want to call it.
Wow.
It's very exciting.
Very, very cool. So do you still have your stash of NFTs in Veve still?
I have a couple.
Yeah.
I play it very differently, I think, than a lot of people in the sense of it's truly like it's like what art do I like the most? Like I truly am full on like as a collector. I never think of this even in terms of like a flipper or even a long-term investor. It's truly, oh, that one looks cool. I want that one. Oh, I love that IP. I want that one. And it's like, yeah, sometimes if one of them goes up a huge amount, I'll sell it because it's like, that's cool, but it's not about like that's just kind of how I treat it. Like for me, it's truly about I like it because I like the art and I like the IP.
Really cool.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting too with your role because, being behind the scenes and seeing how these things are, developed and produced, did that ever, affect the way that you thought about them? Like, because for us, they're just like shiny new toys. But for you, you're like, man, I've seen this in development for 3+ months. Like, I don't want to see this again. Like, how is that process for you?
So what you just described is actually what happens with about 80% of them. Like, like by the time it goes up, by the time we announce it and the community is getting hyped about it, I'm like, thank God I'm finally never going to have to worry about this one ever again. It's just like, it's going out the door. It's no longer, I don't want to say it's their problem now, but it's like, cause you spend so much time like working on it, you just see all the flaws in it and all the things you could have done that didn't come together. So that's like, yeah, effectively, it's nice to like be able to step back from those. Though some of them, it's like I have more attachment to the ones that like I know developed fairly smoothly, came out really well, and were related to an IP that I really liked. Or some of them I have an attachment to because it was such a struggle to get them made for one reason or another. Yeah,
Interesting.
Like it's very subjective.
I can imagine it, but it must feel so good when it's like off the tick box, right? It's like, okay,
yes,
complete, sent. And I guess there never really is a finished product, right? Because I think back in the day, you might have saw those people that would like analyze the NFTs in such extreme detail. They'd be like, there's a speck under the left toenail. And you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, exactly. Shout out to Hello K with his complaining about Superman's leg being detached. Like, yeah, there is a level of like, I mean, but that's a bug. So there's bug fixes that can like visual bug fixes that can go into it. Right. And then there's like my favorite form of speculation is the one where people look at a model and they're like, it feels like it should be smaller, but the file size is really large. And it starts this speculation of, is it full of hidden gamification that we just haven't released yet, or is it just horribly unoptimized? Because it could be one of the two. And that's always fun to see.
Well, it is an interesting thing because, obviously not being a developer, like when you see a larger file size, you're making assumptions that, hey, maybe this is not just based off the detail. Maybe this, like I remember like Elsa, people were speculating on like a voice box. Do you remember that? Like, because
it's really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that is just straight up. You model the inside of the face, the inside of the mouth, because if you're going to pose it and like you want to pose the teeth and the lips and the tongue, if it's in I mean, Elsa wouldn't have an open mouth like, oh, I pose, that'd be weird. But like she would you would model all that and then rig it so you can put it where you want. Same with like the Marvel Mighties, like because they're such like big facial expressions, you have to model the whole face and all that and then rig it so you could pose the face exactly where you want it.
Interesting.
And that's usually what's driving that. And then sometimes it's just like, again, it's like little bugs or little things that like that people don't catch. Or it's the other one is texture sizes. Like the biggest thing that makes a file big isn't going to be all the code that's in it. It's just the size of a 4K image. Like if you can imagine, like each texture is on the model is going to be a bunch of different 4K images and we try to go as high res as we can while staying under the limit so that everything looks as good as possible.
Wow, that's fascinating. And, I imagine there's also like a bit of like project management kind of associated with it, right? Like, okay, so what is that process? Like, do you have like a Gantt chart and you're like, okay, at this point we go through phase one, we send it to the licensors, get their feedback, work with the dev team. Like, what does that look like?
So, first of all, love the use of Gantt charts in the first. So clearly you come from this world too, to some to a degree. The answer is yes. And in droves, we have a shitload of them. Trying to get them all together, because we work with a bunch of different teams who are working on a bunch of different things at once. Yeah. And each asset that we make has a bunch of different steps that it goes through. So everything is like moving down, like kind of one thing connects to the next. So we can see like the whole flow of when we think it could be released, also depending on when the feedback is in that whole chain. A lot of like Kanban boards of like moving tickets left to right through all the steps. I feel like at some point we had it was like 15 steps that an asset has to go through between if it was truly created from scratch with a licensor who wants to check it every phase, it's like 15 steps or something to get it done, just moving the same ticket along, times 100 or more tickets in development at once. So yeah, there's a lot there to be tracked.
No kidding.
And that's just on the content side.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even want to get into that because I can only imagine the depth and, so that, and that's reassuring because, a lot of these NFTs, I know there's some discussion about Electra and her neck not being potentially the best one yet, but there's been a lot that have come out that are like immaculate that you're like, wow, I can only imagine the work that went into it.
Yeah. I'm wondering what happened. Cause with Electra's neck, I think what it probably was, cause it was that one pose. And my guess is cause she has here, look, I'm doing it. I'm doing Electra shit. But like her thing, I think it was probably like from an angle when they were rigging it to get her head in the right pose to like strike the pose that they wanted. They probably put it there and it probably looked good from one angle. And and they didn't see the full turnaround. And then whatever shot they took for that image is it's just bad. It just makes it look real bad. I think the other thing that would have helped that model a lot is slightly better shot angle. I also think for the promo art, I also think it was probably taken at a lower resolution than I feel like a lot of them are, or they took it at 4K but zoomed it in because just knowing how you take pictures inside of Unity like that happens sometimes. Right. So things like that could have fixed it. Also, and this is the part that's probably not fixable, but and people are going to laugh at this, but the lighting and there's no because there's so much skin in that character and you can't get any things it's just one source of light against that skin. And there's nothing like subsurface scattering or extra surface detail kind of work that you can put into a model like that in the mobile Unity URP version because of just processing limitations. And so it just ends up looking like what it did.
Yeah. No, I mean, that makes sense. And it's so interesting that something like a skin tone that could affect lighting could be, one of the big prohibitors in making that NFT.
Yeah. Skin is really hard. Skin is really hard to do because we know what it looks like. We're really familiar with what skin looks like human skin. Same with even car, this specific gloss of the metal of a car, a little bit easier to do, but still getting that right is it's tough. Things like high fantasy elements, if we had a dragon fly by, that would be a lot easier to get right because you don't really have any real world reference from it. I guess maybe you'd expect leathery skin, but if it was covered in scales, you'd be there's no real reference point to it, so you buy it a lot more easily. It's a perfect example of Uncanny Valley, to be honest.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah. Interesting. And then what's funny too is some of the animations that are associated with these NFTs, Spider-Man doing a backflip and things like that. Yeah. What is the how long does it take to produce just that a one movement, a backflip like that? Is that something?
Animation is secretly the slowest and most expensive step. I think people have an expected thing modeling would be, but no, it's really animation. It's very hard to do it in parallel. You can't to put multiple people on different animations for one character is kind of hard to do because then getting the blends to feel right is difficult. Getting the detail into an animation, especially the weight of Spider-Man does a backflip and like does the thwip thing, like that animation, to get the sense of him like pushing down, leaping up with enough force to do a backflip and do that is, I mean, I guess what I'm saying is like that animation, we didn't like, that could have taken just to animate that like 2 weeks, and we didn't necessarily have all the, like, sometimes you run out of time on some of those things. So that's a case that actually of an animation that I wish we had a little bit more time on to like polish it up. But tons of little things like that just make animation take a really long time to do. A general point of if like a general point of reference is like to develop it costs like probably about $1,000 per second of animation, like would be like what I'd equate it to. Yeah.
So crazy. And I guess that's the part that a lot of people don't know about, is actually how much money goes into the production, because so many people are like, dude, it's just an NFT. Like, it's a JPEG, they mass produce it. But I'm like, when I start thinking about all the stuff that you're talking about and all the designing and, you know, the uniqueness, like, I guess, I mean, we can't get into profit margins, but I guess how, you know, it's probably a pretty big chunk is what I'm saying, more than people would presume.
I'll say this. The cost of doing a JPEG is the cost of doing, if you were to do 10,000, like if you were to do a PFP project where each one was a one of one, and this is part of why I like generally hate PFP projects. It's like the cost of doing those, creating all the art for those 10,000 different editions, the one-of-one editions, is still less than the cost of doing a single like Veve NFT for like, as it like generally, like, I mean, that's very generally, but like they're doing static 2-dimensional art that doesn't have to be rendered to a high level of quality. Obviously there are 3D PFP projects and they make those 3D models, but even then I have like, and so that adds to the cost. But like, if you were to compare, like, make 10,000 Bored Apes versus make one Veve model, you're probably still spending more money to make one Veve model.
Wow. Okay. That is fascinating. Right. And I really think that speaks to the quality of the NFTs. And I think that's a lot of people are kind of underestimate that principle. And so on that same note, what I find really interesting is how on the app, like all of a sudden you'll get an upgrade on an NFT one day. It'll be like, oh, guess what? Yes. Ritmo's animated. But it was always I guess, in my understanding, that it wouldn't necessarily be an NFT at that point. That's what people say, because once an NFT is created, it's done and it's not necessarily like malleable. But I guess inside the Veve platform, you can have these unique advantages where things can be upgraded. But as soon as it goes outside of that, potentially some of those animations and what have you are limited. Would that be kind of accurate? Or
I mean, I get where people are coming from. Like, I think it's kind of a weird, almost like a false argument of they're not real NFTs. I understand why people might say it's not in the spirit of NFTs, the idea that it's like, because the only way we can make that happen is if you have the asset and you're like propagating changes to an existing asset that you presumably let go of to the community. So I could understand why like people would argue against that being not in like the spirit of decentralization. But the trade-off is that it allows the piece that you have, if it's well supported, to continue to be improved upon and continue to have value driven to it. If it was just like fire and forget, then if everything was built just truly in that fire and forget mindset, it would be like, okay, whatever you have now, nothing ever is going to change to it. And I'd rather live in a world where I knew that stuff like the pieces that I have that I've invested in, someone is on the other side, like the counterparty to that is investing in making that piece better to drive value. That's like my perspective on it.
I find that fascinating, because that's kind of where I see it as well. Like, I think about companies that stand the test of time and they're always changing, they're always progressing, they're always doing something new, going with the times. If you're just stagnant, I feel like, you know, potentially, like, I mean, obviously we can talk about utility and other things that you can add to an NFT, but I do feel like that's kind of an exciting aspect that you never know when something could just, you know, get better, right? Like you wake up one morning and then all of a sudden that you're doing a double backflip, not just a backflip.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Or just clean up, or just a cleaner version of the same animation would be nice too. But there's plenty of stuff for that. And yeah, that's why to me, that is something that I don't know. I think it's one of those interesting points of debate around it's kind of a philosophical argument. It's like, what do you believe the NFTs should be allowed to be improved by the original creators? Yeah. Or does the original creator of the NFT have to let it go flaws and all and never fix them?
Right.
Like that's almost the discussion that I think people can have. I'm personally in the camp of let's continue to improve stuff. Like, I think it looks cooler that way.
Yeah, interesting. And I think like a lot of people are kind of on different sides of the camp, right? And I'm in the same camp as you. Like, I like the fact that there's that, potential there, right, to do something like that. So I know you were with Veve for quite a while, and it's obviously a super competitive market. So I'm sure people are interested as to, your journey, and maybe just kind of shedding some more light on where you're at now, and I guess why you decided to move on.
Yeah. I mean, without going too much into like personal reasons for sure. Where I work, what I will say this is like the space is growing massively, and like companies like Veve and like also like other players in that space have really opened up and then like shown that there's space for established brands in the market, and not just shown that there is space for them, but also showed them kind of a blueprint for how to get into the space, which is kind of interesting because at some level they've kind of created their own competition, because like you can see Recur and HRO and like stuff coming up like that. Right. But I'm more of the mindset of like, it's still in that rising tide raises all the ships kind of stage. Like, we're not fighting over percentages of market share yet. That's still a long way off, I feel like. And so because of that, like there was stuff that came up, and like opportunities that have come to like, of course, come to Veve in the form of licensors, been stuff that's come to me personally in the form of opportunities to work with other brands. I think people are now starting to see, I was in the back of the class space yesterday that they were running, and we got onto the subject of like music and stuff, and people started sharing music. I haven't really talked about it with people. I've talked a bit about the game stuff, but I'm a fanatic for electronic music. So when the opportunity came for Tomorrowland, which is one of the biggest, most aspirational brands in the entire electronic music space, and as someone who lives in the US, who only sees Tomorrowland as this magical, far-off European festival, like the idea to work on that and be a part of that was really exciting. And so a big thing that came out of that was just like, that's a really exciting opportunity. And I get to have a very strong creative say in the direction of that product. Wow. So to go from someone who's always admired that brand to now helping shape it in the NFT Web3 kind of world is something that's like really exciting to me. And that's true of, and unfortunately I can't go into it right now for the same reason no one answers when questions because the time is not right, but like similar things are happening with the other companies and products that I'm working with right now. And just the amount of opportunity out there is just, it's just very exciting, especially if like you come from and we were talking, if you come from an engineering or a production or an art production background, or an artist background, I think there's so much space for you to find like cool new opportunities in Web3 and in NFTs.
Wow, amazing. And first of all, congratulations. And I can only imagine, like you said, the amount of opportunities out there, with a guy with your expertise and experience. So I mean, that's good, right? And I think, Tomorrowland, I was kind of, dabbling into it, and I'm curious to learn more about that project. So could you maybe just like walk people through what that looks like right now?
Yeah. So right now, versus as we're continuing to grow it, it's going to change. It's going to evolve a lot over the next coming weeks and months leading up to Tomorrowland, Belgium, which is the big music festival they're having. But right now, what we have is a set of, basically we did an NFT drop around Tomorrowland Winter, which is their winter music festival, which is basically they take over a ski resort in the French Alps and turn it into a giant electronic music festival, which is just so far up my alley. It's like ridiculous because
that's crazy, bro.
I know, it's like the coolest event. It's the coolest event concept I've ever seen. So like they're doing that. We also have and then we did an NFT drop around that. That NFT drop, it was 6,500 that we went out. 1,500 were available to festival goers at Tomorrowland Winter to basically complete an activity called the Quest. And it was basically a scavenger hunt across the ski resort. And if you completed the Quest, you got the NFT drop for free. And so and then we also had the NFT available for sale for 3 Salon. It's available on FTX right now, ftx.us. Going forward, we're currently building out what the Tomorrowland Belgium drop is going to be. And we're thinking of doing a lot like similar things, having the Quest. Now that's going to be a much more intense one to go for, because at Tomorrowland Winter, it's 1,500 and you're competing with 20 to 30,000 people for it. At Tomorrowland Belgium, the demand's going to be a lot higher, and we're probably going to keep the mint numbers about the same. So It's going to be you versus 600,000 people to go get those. So I think the demand is for sure going to be there. And then we're looking at basically between those 2 drops and a drop we're going to do in the fall. Basically, you'll be able to take all these drops and kind of chimera them all together into a ticket to Tomorrowland Belgium 2023. And I don't want to give away anything more than that, because we're still planning and designing a bunch of other exciting stuff around that. But hopefully people are going to see, oh, it's a lot more than just a ticket to basically a free ticket to the festival. There's going to be a lot more events online and at those events, like in real life, as well as online digitally, for people to engage with, that I think they're going to be really excited about. So you're getting a lot more than just a festival ticket out of the experience. And if I've learned one thing about the Tomorrowland team, it's they are committed to this bit. Like they are all in on the space, is like not just going into doing these NFTs as like a way to like get into space, but they're like, okay, what if we pivoted? What does pivoting Tomorrowland as a music festival to an entirely crypto powered Web3 driven experience? Like they are super interested in being on the cutting edge of this stuff. This is effectively like the Genesis drop of this whole experience. We've talked about stuff like NFT ticketing. They already do an entirely cashless music festival. So we're looking at, okay, well, we're doing cashless. What does a music festival that runs entirely where everything at the music festival is turned as acting through their own cryptocurrency? Like that's another thing they're looking at. So we're talking about all this stuff and looking at what are the ways that we can really bring Tomorrowland forward and bring that experience into that Web3 world in a whole new way. And it's a really exciting space. It's a really exciting sandbox to play in, because I mean, you get to do it with like this awesome genre of music and these awesome stages and all these really cool artists and DJs and influencers and what have you. So it's been a ton of fun.
Wow. I mean, geez, I can only imagine the size of your connections now, going from David, you, Dan, and then now over to Tomorrowland. I'm sure you've seen, like you said, some famous DJs. I'm sure we can't speculate, but I know, a whole host of them that go there. I mean, it's pretty much all of them. So that's pretty friggin' remarkable. And I guess, just speaking more about that is, do you believe that the future of NFTs, like a lot of people think it's like a fad, right? And I keep telling people like, this is going to be totally immersive. Like this is almost going to be a natural day, in the life eventually. And I'm just thinking like with tickets now being on your phone and already being kind of, halfway through that bridge, do you really see this as like the future of, other electric festivals and things of that nature?
So I'm seeing it more and more, because I'm starting to see the problems it can solve for those groups. And I think to take a step back from even just Tomorrowland or even just music, I have started to see companies and groups coming through building on the technology of blockchain and that distributed ledger, whether it's through a coin or just a blockchain that people are connected to, or NFTs. I'm starting to see things that make sense as, okay, this is a use case for this technology that makes a ton of sense in the real world. And it all comes down to basically, if you are in an industry, if you're in a space or an industry, we're having a database of everything that's going on in that space. So like I'm making this up. You had a database of all the users, or you had a database if it was a supply chain, like a database of every part in the supply, where having everybody on the same standard and working in the same ecosystem would create a ton of efficiency, but no one wants to, but they're all competitors, so no one wants to give up their competitive edge. So basically, if like having that, building it like truly a trustless database, building a world, an ecosystem where companies who normally compete can achieve efficiency without giving up their distinct competitive advantage. So they're sharing the tools for efficiency, but they're not sharing the information in those tools. That's where a blockchain makes a ton of sense. And NFTs specifically in that space make a ton of sense when each item that's listed in that has to be unique. And non-fungible being the, I guess, is like kind of the term, but I think taking a step back from that, like if you had a data bit, like I'm trying to think of an example. Let's say you're a toy manufacturer, for example, like a physical toy manufacturer. You have a bunch of injection molds and tooling and like and you have your machinery and you have your parts. If you could basically attach a token ID effectively to each one of those parts, and anytime it was put into like some device or something, you could track where that part was, you would be able to see your entire supply chain and understand where everything is in a very high level of detail. And you could share that data with other people. So you could like avoid like fraud, and you could avoid like, you could understand when people are like, you could reward users for holding stuff. Like it just enables you to do a bunch of stuff, and it might be valuable to share that information with another company, or like if you're a manufacturer for what have you making these parts, it might be helpful to share that, but you don't want to give away your user base or where you get your parts from.
Right.
That's like what I'm getting at, because that's the part that's important to you. And right now, with traditional centralized databases, you'd have to give all that information away. With a blockchain where it's encrypted and people can only see the part, but they don't know its entire history, and they don't know or they know its history, but they don't necessarily know what all those pieces of history mean. That could be really interesting.
Wow. And like, it's fascinating, like just hearing you say this, because it's almost like anonymous data, but that actually has, things that are non-anonymous. Like people are actually associated with this that you can still track, but it's not like you're giving that information away. And the biggest issue we have in healthcare, because I think, I work at a hospital, is that exact same thing. It's like, oh, well, sorry, I can't give you this email. I can't share any information because it's all confidential. But potentially, if I was just looking at it from a metric perspective that wasn't associated with somebody directly, we'd actually be able to look at those figures a lot better, right?
And to go even further, if you're an insurance company and you have your network of patients, another group has their network of patients, part of the whole idea of referrals is do you someone who's in your trusted network where you understand the service. A trustless, I mean, this is a weird thing to extend to healthcare because it's literally dealing with people's lives, but to some degree, if there is data in there that you don't want to share with your competitors, but sharing that data, but offering, it allows you to decide what data you want to share, what data you don't want to share, and build it in a single ecosystem that it builds standards that everybody builds on top of. And we know that if everybody's building on the same standard, it creates efficiency. That's how we see things going. So that to me is where I think this technology starts making a lot of sense. And quite frankly, an NFT, or the idea of a token that's a unique identifiable token, makes a lot more sense in that world than coins, where everything is basically the same and you're just tracking where they are if that makes sense. So, and I'm not going to lie, this is something that was introduced to me only a couple of days ago. I'm not the expert on this field, but as someone was walking me through and applying it to their industry, which was a kind of a high-tech manufacturing industry, and them and their competitors not wanting to share information, but wanting to share the same database and tools so they could all be on the same system because it would increase efficiency. I'm like, that makes sense. I can buy into that vision of the future. That is something that is properly differentiate about blockchain, because you can't achieve that trustlessness in a centralized database.
Wow, fascinating. I think that was one of the best ways I've heard it explained so far, because a lot of people struggle to actually find what are the tangible benefits and things that are kind of the low-hanging fruit. And it's interesting because right now NFTs are, when you hear that word, you usually think art, think investing, or you think people making a lot of money, but it's it could be a million times bigger, so to speak, than what it's currently now. And so on that same note, with collectability, Trevor, we find that the first of something in the physical world means a lot. And it seems that there's also some parallels to the digital, like we saw it with, Bored Apes, or no, not Bored Apes, CryptoPunks, and, some of the stuff on Veve and other collectibles like Autograph and stuff like that. I guess being like somebody that's behind the scenes, do you see the worth of that? Like, are people really paying attention to that kind of like intricate data, or is this something that we're all just like coming up with? What's your take on that?
I think, I think first of all, there is a hugely diverse set of like engagement patterns and motivations that people can have. So to buy anything, like, and I know that's a very like truism kind of statement, like anybody buys anything for any reason doesn't really say anything. But like what I'm getting at is like, if you're trying to create a product for that space, yes, there is an audience that cares deeply about, oh, this is the first one in that space, the CryptoPunks, or this is the most popular, the first one to really blow up to this, like, I would say truly mainstream level of knowledge, which is, I think, where like Bored Apes kind of lives right now. But there's only a certain audience that buys into that vision of that idea of this has value. And I don't know how large that audience is long-term compared to the audience for like, can I buy this thing? Does it do cool shit? Do I care about the cool shit that it does? Okay, then that's what I wanted. Like, I think we're starting to enter a world of utility over hype, for lack of a better word. I think that's where things are tending to go. Like, you need to offer other things that that whatever the NFT can do to the consumer. And I actually think that has a much broader appeal. And that's going to continue to grow. It also means the barrier to entry is going to continue to get higher for new projects. And the quality bar is going to continue to get better, because everybody who's coming in later has to differentiate against what came before. So if I'm building, like, I think if you're doing a PFP art project right now, you're 6 months too late already. Like, it's that ship has sailed. Like, there's already so many of them. And it's like, it's too simple. It seems like the market's already moved past it. I think we're very much starting to get into the wave of like brands starting to get in and do stuff like that. But I think the next thing after that is going to be pushing stronger utility, stronger engagement, more ways for me to engage in like what we're buying here. And I also think that has a much broader market, because there were a lot of people who see the value of Bored Apes, but there's a hell of a lot more people who don't.
Yeah.
And I think if you can continue, so the answer to how do you grow the market is not to try to, like, we all know that the principle of like show don't tell. Like, telling people that Bored Apes are valuable isn't going to make them buy them. If anything, it's going to make them reject it harder. Nobody likes to be told that they're thinking about something the wrong way. It's actually a lot easier to make something that they'll probably like a little bit more, and look at their reasons for not buying it. Most people say it's useless. Okay, build something useful. Solve that problem.
Right.
That's like when I think like what's the products that are going to win in NFTs, and it's true like anywhere. It's like unmet need. What is the unmet need in the space? Can you build something to serve that need, and that will find an audience?
Man,
or it's a lot easier at least to find an audience. There's a lot more that goes into it, but that should be the starting point. And trust me, the PFP art thing that need has been met plenty.
Yeah. And there's a few in that made it, but like you said, there's probably hundreds of thousands of projects, if not more, that have come out, and only like little to none that have gone through. So that's fascinating. And I just want to bring up something quickly. I remember when Binance Coin, I think it was like, came out way back, a lot of people were like, maybe a year ago, it was pretty, maybe around $50 a pop. And a lot of people didn't believe in it because they're like, oh, it's a centralized, system, et cetera. And then all of a sudden, because it was so efficient, people went into it and like all the money poured in. So I can imagine, like you said, if there was ever a use case, I'm just going to throw out a stupid example but like, if let's just say a Veve Disney NFT could get you cheaper access for a week at a theme park, well, then now people just by trying to save money won't really care about the NFT, but now you have a huge base of people that may be interested in doing something like that. So I get that's what you're saying. It's kind of like when there's that utility and that demand there for reasons that aren't necessarily like collecting or because it looks cool. that's when we're going to see the real demand kind of, come in and kind of take over, right?
Yeah. And now it's worth noting there's an audience for everything. Like there are people like, if you, whatever you come up with at an NFT, there's probably someone out there who wants that. The question is, how big is that audience? And the PFP audience is probably not that big. Like they have plenty to choose from. Hell, my Twitter post, like my Twitter profile picture is my old profile picture that I minted as an NFT as a joke to make fun of that shit. Like that's like where that came from. Cause I'm like, I can do it too. And I spent a lot less money building that thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's plenty of examples of like, it's just, there's plenty of examples of that kind of stuff. It's just about finding the thing that breaks through. I think the Binance thing is also another good example of like, you can argument. Like there's a difference between arguing sentiment and arguing results. Like, people saying Binance smart, like what is the Binance coin isn't going to work because it's centralized. It's like, okay, you're arguing the sentiment of it, but what is the actual behavior that people are exhibiting? And the behavior is, oh, you made a coin that's easier to use, easier to understand. I can trade it with all these other cryptocurrencies. So it has more utility. It's more accessible. It's easier to use. People are going to go for that because the sentiment of it doesn't match someone else's ideals for what the space should be. That's an irrelevancy. It has to all be about, is this a pain point? And is this product solving that pain point? And Binance coin is like a clear example of that.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
So here's another tough question then, because you see so many projects come out. We've got Veve, Recur, all these different ones.
Yeah.
And the hardest thing that I find is that they want to try to scale their platforms to as many millions of users as they can get. Right? But the issue is that eventually you have to have collectability. So you have to make these things worth something. You just can't mint 400,000 NFTs and expect them all to do well. But
is that a slam at Palm with their cowl drop?
Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to say. Like, it's like such a hard thing because eventually if you have 10 million users and you're dropping mints that are like in the 5,000 range, people are going to be not engaged because they're never going to get one, or they're going to have to buy in at 100K. And then contrastingly, if you're making everybody happy, they're going to have these NFTs, but they're going to worth next to nothing. And so I guess my question is like, these, like a master collector program or a leaderboard on Hero, or all these things help incentivize, users to stay engaged. But I guess, when do you think it could kind of tip out? Like maybe Veve can only grow to a certain amount of people before the system starts to break. Do you know what I mean? Where it's just not engaging for 10 million, or maybe the 7 million is the threshold. Like I find that's a really interesting conversation, and I haven't figured that out yet.
I think ultimately it's a balance of goals. It's a balance of, and now I'll say like it's a balance of what's the outcome you're trying to achieve with what you're building? Like what is the return on objective? What's the behavior I want to see in my community? So if I am building to drive user acquisition and get people into my system, I'm probably doing lower cost, higher mints, less of an upside is inherent to that. So because it like people who have never owned a collectible who want to experiment with the system, having high mint numbers and low cost is a really good way to get into that.
Right.
But it doesn't really achieve, but if their goal as a user is to see a return and see that go up, having that high volume probably doesn't lead to that, and they might lose interest. So if that user came to the site to be a flipper or like someone in that category, you lose that audience. If they came to the site to be a collector, it's like, let's say it's what's a character who hasn't gone, who I haven't done yet?
Thor.
Let's say it's Thor. So I love Thor. He's one of my favorite characters. I think Chris Hemsworth is dreamy. Whatever the reason is that I wanted to buy the collectible, that if they made 100,000 of them, that would, and sold them for $20, and if he does all the animation stuff, takes off his shirt, whatever that person who's into Chris Hemsworth wants. I can't believe I'm still running with that analogy. But like, if whatever that is, that would cater to the person who just wants to collect that because of what it represents as a character, as an asset. But you're choosing that audience over your flipper audience. The flipper audience is going to look at that and be like, no, that should be an addition. Those should be $500 each, go for 5,000 and only have 5,000 units or something, so that the big collectors can get in and turn it into and it like racks up. But you do that and you sacrifice that larger audience. It's a thing you have to balance when you're ultimately in a world of effectively limited inventory. It's not a problem that games have, because games don't even like games that sell digital content, because they don't cap their inventory. They'll just, if you want to buy it, they'll sell it to you. They don't have to worry about these things. They think more about, okay, it's about how do we make the game engaging and getting people engaged through that way. This is like a tougher audience to reach, because you have to balance two things against each other. It's not really, there was a term for it. Someone did a whole GDC talk on this, and I'm forgetting what it was called, but he was talking about the different kinds of problems that games face in this sense.
Interesting.
I would describe this as a design problem, not a technical problem. A technical problem being something that I can throw money at a technical problem, and it might be extremely expensive to figure out, but I can eventually figure it out if I invest enough time, energy, and resources into it. Right. There is no world in which I can actually throw resources at this problem to solve it. Yeah. Like you have to choose one or the other. That's like my take on it. That's a design problem.
Yeah. And this is the thing, like, and I feel like a lot of them haven't, they haven't gotten the best design at, because Recur came out with those passes, and then they had, the 20,000 Star Trek NFTs that went, and it's like, it's hard, because then it's like, well, I got a pass, but I still didn't get an NFT. So it's like, there's all these different systems trying it out. And then I thought about Veve the other day. I was like, man, what happens if, 60% of these, people with more collectibles end up getting more priority for drops or more lotto tickets, so to speak? Like, how does that affect the engagement of new users? How does that affect the engagement of people that are grails? So I guess on that note, is there like predictive analysis and like statistical methods and things that you can do to kind of predict behavior based off the knowledge users, or is that like getting really into the weeds?
So I think what you're describing there is you're throwing money at the problem to try to solve it, because what you described is a bunch of tech that you're trying to build to solve it, but It's not really, you're really solving the symptoms, not the underlying disease. So I just remember it's called, I'll link it to you if you want to share it to the group. It's a GDC talk that this guy named Alex Jaffe, who was a designer at Riot Games, did. It's called Cursed Problems in Game Design. And I forget what he described as not cursed problems are, but the basic underlying idea is a cursed problem is a problem where you have to choose one thing or the other, because you just can't have it both ways. The design of the system doesn't allow you to serve both needs. This is the inherent problem with platforms like what Veve is doing, and other problems like recurrent HRO will inevitably run into the same problem. It's an example of what you have to deal with. So I think you have to, that's what it is.
Sit here, right?
Yeah. And it's like 50 minutes long. So this is like something that, like, if there's anybody in the video, if you want to share with this is a really good thing for people who are in the space to watch if they want to go really deep into this kind of stuff, because that's what GDC is all about. But I don't know if this is going to appeal super wide, but you'll see this might answer some of your challenges. And he talks about cursed problems that he's faced and how they fixed it in the games that they were building.
Wow. Fascinating. And that's the other thing too, right? Like all of this is getting pioneered, right, Trevor? Like as much as there's I know like gaming has like similar stuff, but a lot of it's pioneering and coming up with these new systems that haven't really been done before, right? Like, or like never done to the scale or this ease of access. Right.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, so the question is, what is the solution to the problem?
Yeah.
I don't know. I have ideas for how to solve it. But there's no one thing that you're going to put out that solves all of it. Ultimately, I think you got to do a mix. You got to do a mix of things for the new users that they'll want to buy into, things for the old users that they want to buy into. What you can't do, I think, just to keep the system fair, is skew because this is a world of like selling items. So you can't skew who you're selling to one way or the other. I don't think that's right. Personally, it just feels icky to like say we're going to prioritize selling to new users versus selling to old users. because that's like selling to new users to get them hooked versus selling to old users to keep them in. Like, I don't think that's the right way to go.
Yeah. And it's so hard to think about all these different types of engagement, right? But
Yeah.
fascinating, man. So I guess another question too is I recently was looking more into Zynga, and they're starting an NFT project still under the wraps.
Yeah,
but
them in Jam City too. Yeah.
Okay, amazing. And so now we got like, huge game developers, coming in and kind of being active in this space. And one thing they said to me, which was interesting, is that they already have users that are spending like millions of dollars on their games.
Yes.
like freaking apps, dude. Like not even like, and like, obviously there's not many of them, but there's people that are just like, oh, let me get everything I can. So they're providing options to these people. And I don't know if
first of all, it's a lot more people than you think. It's it's like, these are like the term whale came originally from the gaming, and by gaming, like casino industry, was adopted kind of tongue in cheek by the like mobile, like free to play games industry. But has come to accurately describe a lot of what the business models around those games are, which is it's just designed to serve that audience. Quite frankly, I think that's the right starting point for play to earn, because there's like, it's an audience that has already said and very strongly voted with their wallet that if I'm experiencing something painful and annoying in a game, I will buy my way out of that problem. Like the idea of pay to win, that whole pay to win concept, which like core gamers get really up in arms around that shit. They absolutely hate that. They don't want that anywhere near their experience. But like I was saying about different users with different engagement patterns, for every one of those gamers that feel strongly about that, there's just as many gamers that don't. And quite frankly, if you look at the number of mobile game players versus core game players, you'd realize there's a lot more people that don't care about that, which is kind of interesting. And it's not to say one thing's wrong or the other. They just have different motivations, different engagement patterns. And I think that audience, the audience of willing to pay for advantages or willing to pay for that kind of stuff, is probably going to take to like NFT and to a lesser degree, like pay to earn games faster would be my guess. I think NFTs specifically, pay to earn probably less so, because pay to earn speaks to an entirely different type of play, which is around like that play to earn. It's more about playing to earn money, that return on investment, which is like fun is not a factor. It's about how much money am I making?
Right.
So I think it makes sense to me for Zynga and Jam City to be and like companies like that to be the starting point for this. And for the same reason that like Ubisoft doing something with Ghost Recon, and which is a hardcore open world shooter, and like companies like EA or Take-Two like saying they're looking in the space and then backing out because of the reaction. They just don't have the right product. Like that's just not where they play right now. And it'll start in free to play, and it'll probably at some point move over. But it's like,
interesting.
Again, it's about meeting the audience where they are. You can't educate the audience into buying your product.
Makes sense. And I think like you said it perfectly. I think that's why a lot of these projects are going to be focused on that kind of whale investor and the people that are already embedded into the space. And, like it was really interesting too, because I think the terminology that they're using is, hey, we're finally rewarding you for the time that you've invested. Like you spend, hundreds, if not thousands of hours developing a character. And then if that game's not popular anymore, well, there goes your thousands of hours. As now, if it's an NFT that you've built to level 99, you could sell that off for maybe not a crazy amount, but at least something, at least it's worth something.
Or you can hold it. It can live on with some permanence beyond the existence of the title you played it in.
Right.
I think here's the thing, like, I don't like the idea of you're finally getting rewarded, because that's ignoring the fact that games are built entirely around a system of objectives and rewards. Like games are all about, this is the thing you're trying to accomplish it. When you accomplish it, I'm give you something in return. It's just that reward forever has been related to fun or accomplishment or achievement or social behaviors or whatever the reason is you play a game. Like you play, like I play through like, I play through like hardcore single player campaign games for the sake of seeing through the story and seeing where it goes and like beating it. Like that's the reward. I don't need to be paid for my time in that. Like, that's not what I'm looking for. And I don't think most gamers are.
Right.
There are some, but I don't know if everybody is. And the question is, how big is the audience that is looking for that? And are they willing to pivot off what they're currently playing to do that instead?
Interesting. And I think that's the fear too, is like you said, if they're already enjoying this stuff, and then you say, well, guess what? Now we're going to associate this with, some kind of investment principles. Like, hey, listen, leave me alone. Like I'm in this for, the fan base. I'm in this to know more about the character, to the storyline. Like you said, I don't want to be associated with an investment. That's what stocks are for. That's what this, so I could get, like you said, meeting the audience where it's at. And the other thing too around this is I was talking to a lot of game developers, and they were talking about like interoperability being like a difficult aspect. Like we were joking around saying, hey, can you take your Star Wars NFT out into a metaverse in the future? And they're like, started laughing at me like I was nuts. They're like, dude, like, do you understand how, how much kind of goes into keeping these licensors happy and what you can and can't do. Right. And I think that's just an interesting distinction for people to understand too, is that like that might change as things become more competitive. But like, what was that experience like for you? Like, was it like, hey, we can't have, this arm be this length or this, like, what does that look like from, I guess, the licensor process?
I think it's from a lot. I think it's a lot more than the licensor. Anybody who's saying we can't do that because the licensors won't do it is they're right. And they're also kind of dodging saying we don't want to do it either. I'm just like,
that's good to know.
And there's a number of reasons for that. Well, sorry, there are technical reasons, like going back to it's a not cursed design problem. It's also a cursed one. And I can talk, and like, so the not cursed reason is, and the thing that's solvable is every game is kind of its own system built on its own rules, like all the way down to just like the rendering model that it uses or the physics model. Yeah, certain games are built on Unity, certain games are built in Unreal, and you build assets for all games using generally the same principle, but the same principles, but like there's no standard like design language that every game uses. There's no standard visual language. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, I feel like this is a bad equivalency, but it'd be like almost asking like, could I make a movie longer by cutting, like if I had a movie and I wanted to make it better, could I just cut out the sequence from that movie and stitch it into this other movie and that would suddenly make it better? It's like, no, because it's like, this movie was filmed with these actors and this movie was filmed with these actors. This movie was filmed on these cameras, which have a different like look to them than these cameras. This one was lighting, render, post-process. Like all the processing was done different in one versus the other, different aspect ratios, whatever it is. Like you can't just move tech from one to the other and just have it blend seamlessly. Like,
beautiful.
That's just the technical problem. Then there's all the like business model and economy design problems that come through. Right. Let's say I am the person who makes this universe. If I made a universe and you had stuff that was interoperable and you could put it in my universe, that's great. That's great for the end user. But I need to make money to run my business. And I do that by selling content. How am I supposed to sell content when you can just bring in content that other people made and use it instead of the content I've made? So that's like a problem that needs to be solved. Right. And like, so and there's a lot of versions of that going forward, and different like iterations on that, basically using when you start breaking down the walls of these gardens, it's really hard to differentiate products on their content. You have to differentiate on their underlying system, which in turn makes it harder to make the tech work together because they're different systems becoming more different from each other. So
listen, I appreciate that. I really appreciate this because, like I said, the surface answer and the answer I usually get, it's just blame it on the licensors. Because like you said, somebody doesn't want to spend 10 minutes talking to me about what you just did. So, so, I mean, and that makes perfect sense. And I think that's the assumption people make is, well, hey, product's created, like just, hop, skip, and a jump and send it here. But like you said, there's so much that goes into something like that. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. And it's like, and you have to make it work for everybody that's involved. It can't just be, it's undoubtedly better for the buyer, But when you're running a company or running any like product like that, you have multiple stakeholders you need to serve, and the buyer, the customer is just one of them. And if that doesn't serve everybody's needs, no one's really going to go for it, because like I mean, it's still businesses. They're not really like the name of the game isn't altruism.
Yeah, I hear you. So I guess switching gears a little bit, man.
Yeah.
How was it like to hang out with David Yu? Did you ever get to see some of his
I have never met David Yu in person, nor have I met Dan in person. They were in New Zealand the whole time. Yeah. They're on the other side of the world, and we were still kind of in the pandemic. So I never got to meet them in person. I talked with them fairly regularly. I talked with Dan like every day when I was there. David, because David wasn't really on the content side or like the app itself. He was on the licensing and getting that stuff, which is like further upstream from me. In that development pipeline, I mean. So I didn't have as many interactions with him. Obviously, the place where I interacted most with everybody was when we were at a designer con last year. Like that was the exciting time when we got everybody together. Reese, Alex, Noah, and then anybody from the Veve fam who came into town. And yeah, I'm excited to see more of that stuff come together in the future, with the Veve fam, my new Tomorrowland fam, hopefully bringing them together. Like I was talking with them about. And there's still a lot to explore here, but I was talking to like the Tomorrowland team about, look at what like VFriends and VCon have done in terms of creating basically like an event that already people look at as like the hub of NFT discussion, kind of up there with like NFT NYC. And I'm like, can Tomorrowland be that for Europe? Like, can we like turn Tomorrowland? And it would be a lot cooler because it'd also be attached to a giant music festival. So we're thinking about like, we're talking about stuff like that, of like, how can we turn that into a hub to bring people together? Because it's really fun to be in these communities and talking about this stuff with people, because everybody has really interesting perspectives. And I like hearing everybody's perspective, because that's how we build smarter products that also serve the needs of the people who are buying this stuff.
Right. Amazing. And I guess with that, like what kind of metrics can you pull, like in terms of engagement? Like what kind of analytics can you look at? Like, is it like, oh, these people spend this X amount of time in the app. This person stares at his Marvel 1 SR for an hour a day. Like, like
that's a funny question.
What the fuck could we see? Like, what are you know?
I think that's like, I mean, obviously there was like user accounts was the one they were tracking. I think the next like big one to chase is, retention is like a weird one to ask for, because you kind of have a captive audience when you don't have when you don't have cash out. The audience is kind of captive.
Right.
But I think the one that really matters for long-term growth in that space is what we would call at Riot, they'd call it AGPA, which stands for average game. It was AGHPA. It was an acronym that stood for average game hours per active. And it was basically for users, active users, people who are regularly engaging, how many hours a week are they spending on the app? And League of Legends numbers are fucking nuts, because I don't know if you're familiar with that game, but it is like super hardcore, super invested, and matches are like an average of like 30 to 40 minutes, like 20. Sorry, I'm terrible at the game. So they're like 30 to 40 minutes long. People who are good at the game, it's more like 20. But for the rest of for us plebs, it takes a little longer to put the shit together to actually win, or in my case, lose. But like the point is, like, people are going in and playing 30 to, like, the average player is playing like 30 matches a week of League of Legends or more than that, and it's taking them like 15 hours to do it each week. Like, that is a shitload of engagement. I don't know if any games come close to that, like in their active user base. So,
but that's a pretty good derivative of like success in
for me, it matters a lot, because it shows that there's something here that people want to come back and do every day, and there's value, and they see the value in spending their time there. Like, and that's valuable in terms of engagement. There's also a pretty strong corollary. Like, the joke is that it's actually just one line on a chart, but what it really is the two lines of like as people get more, the more hours you put into the game,
yeah,
the more money you spend on the game at almost a perfectly linear rate.
Wow.
It's like, it's just what it's at least, I don't know how true that is of all games, but for League of Legends specifically, like if they can get you to spend more hours in the game, you like the average user spends a lot more money. And so it's about driving hours up. I think that would probably apply to Veve. So if I was like building this, like, and you're trying to build an app that leads to success long term, and in turn, that would drive value back to the user base, because people spending more money means they're buying more collectibles, they're trading more collectibles, more active marketplace, all that kind of stuff. If you can drive those numbers up, it helps all that.
Amazing. And I guess that's where like the community is so vital, right? Because without it, it's just silicon secure. One of the whales on Veve always says this to me. It's like, it's just data points. If it's not, if it's not the community driving this back. And I guess that's why, building a sustainable community and a powerful one is also, I guess, probably the number one. It's like a soccer game and scoring a goal. Like these are things that are, almost like vital in order to move forward, right?
Everything you do and to carry your soccer analogy forward, everything you do in soccer is focused on achieving an outcome. That goes back to objectives and rewards, and that outcome is scoring the goal. And when you do it, the reward is you get a point, and that helps you get closer to winning. Same thing applies like in Veve. It's like, the objective with them is to keep people engaged and give them more stuff for them to do. So if people feel more invested in their time, they're much more likely to invest with their money and spend time in the app. I totally agree with what you're saying. I think the data points is an interesting one, because it argues that like, how do you break it? It argues that you have to break away from that, and it also argues that the important thing is like the marketplace more than like some of the apps, like some of the like built-in utility stuff. So how do you increase? I think you have to increase about like what you can do. Like that's probably the starting point.
Right. Interesting.
NFTs.
Yeah. And I guess like, that goes back to also like a team that's able to kind of manage the scale of this stuff. Like I was even thinking about it the other day, like a master collector program at scale or a leaderboard program at scale. Like you might need like 5 to 10 people just literally running a program like that. Right. Like, I mean, maybe I'm wrong if things are so well done from an artificial intelligence, or you can create algorithms.
I think of it differently, which is like the goal of that system the goal of a design isn't to build an elegant or perfectly balanced design. Like, to borrow, again, I'm borrowing like League of Legends parlance here, but the goal isn't balance. Balance is a tool to help us achieve the goal of engagement. Like that's what matters. So I look at that system, and that's why I think it's like almost silly that like they went through so much into the value of everything in the system this early when the system isn't implemented. First of all, implementing it, it takes some work to get it stood up. And there is like game designer work, there's live balance design work that goes into it. So there's definitely like a team there's definitely like a somewhat heavy lift to build a system like that in teams you have to build. But the thing that I don't understand is putting out the values of that system this early, because ultimately they shouldn't be set in stone. Like they shouldn't. And like, you're already skewing the data you get from them by announcing them this early, because people are looking those and making assumptions in what they're collecting to try to min-max that system. And which means that when the system goes live, if it's working or it's not working, you can't tell based off the data, because it's already been skewed by people trying to change their behaviors to match the data they've been given. So like, if I were doing this, I would just keep and I would approach this the same way. Like League never announces changes. Actually, and no game ever announces changes like weeks, months ahead of when they're going live in a live service, in a live game, because then people change how they play the game.
Right.
Like it usually comes as like either a couple days before or a complete surprise, because you don't want people to change your behavior, because you need that system to go in so you can monitor the change in behavior in order to know if it's working or not in favor of what you're trying to achieve.
Right. Exactly. Like you're making your interpretation and your analysis based off the behavior, then creating a system that's going to benefit that even further. Or what have you. So like you said, if you're changing it beforehand, then people are going to adapt, and then you're then It's like kind of like, what do they call it? Like a false positive or whatever.
Exactly.
Like,
you're just creating a shitload of false positives because you're going to put the system out and everybody's going to align to that system. You're like, wow, it works perfectly. Everybody's or you're going to, or you're going to look at it and being like, wow, because everybody min-maxed it so fast. Or like, you're going to be like, oh, it gives away too much. We got to turn everything down. And that's not the right reaction, because what you're really reacting to is people's response, as opposed to you're reacting to people's like premeditated response. You're not reacting to their real behavior.
Yeah, exactly.
If that makes sense.
No, that's
it's just like, it's like, I think I wouldn't have announced it. Also, it like putting out that much information that far ahead sets an expectation that you can deliver all those things soon. This is another like general communication thing that I would love to see like Veve improve upon, which is don't announce stuff so far ahead of time, because then you're going to make changes to it. And then you're also going to like realize certain things are going to be delayed, and you just build your own disappointment around your own product. Like people don't get mad about shit they don't know about.
Exactly. And I think, man, that's such a good thing. Like, and I think the biggest thing here is like, under promise, over deliver, than the opposite. Right. And I think people create, like you said, expectations. So I'll give you a perfect example. Like I bought a Spider-Man for $18,000 back in December, and the person was selling it based off of the announcement that cash out was coming right away. And so they're, and to fairness to them, they made the right move, but I was kind of like, I don't think it's going to happen. So I bought in. But it's like, those are the decisions people are making based off of the communication, right? Especially
when you work in like to me, it's kind of like, if it was a different product, it would just lead to a lot of disappointment. Yeah. But in this world where it's like people are speculating on this shit and they need reliable and they want reliable information, and then you're putting stuff out there, but it's not like entirely accurate, or it's changing too much, like that creates uncertainty, which drives down value across the board. But it's just like, it's kind of, it's like not right to me in the same way. Like, why are you putting stuff out there that you're not in a position to deliver on? Now, if something goes wrong and you're close and something goes wrong at the last minute, fine, I understand that, but clarify that. But if you're saying, hey, and we're thinking about doing this because we think this would be really cool and it's coming soon, or I hate to use that word because it's
soon,
so fucking
soon night. I think exactly.
Soon night. But like if you're doing that, it's like, and people are making effectively investment decisions based off that really throws things off. So I'm not a fan of that. Yeah. Like, to me, that's why it's like, that's part of why I don't try to play this like as a speculative thing. For me, it's really about what's the stuff I like. That's what I'm going to buy. That's what I'm going to collect.
Right. And I think that's, the intention is like it was kind of a collector's app, but a lot of people are making, like you said, financial decisions because they're like, wow, this is the first Batman that hit the blockchain, or this is X, Y, and Z. And so I guess on that point, so what does that look like for the GoChain data compared to the like IMX? Is like, I know, I don't know if you were around for that time, but I guess they were saying that
I don't know enough about, I don't know how to read that shit. Like, honestly, the community, like one of the reasons I've started getting in spaces more lately is I love the analysis. I think like, I want to hire this whole thing. I want to hire everybody as the analyst, as the analytics team for like the new projects I'm working on. Cause you guys are like so fucking good at it and have such a deep understanding of this, and can look at what you're seeing and not just like look at it and deeply understand what you're looking at, but anticipate behavior from it. Like that's exactly what an analyst should be doing, like providing those recommendations. So like, I love it. I think it's really fascinating. And like, also to like, I forgot my train, like my other thing I was going to say on like what you were saying, but like, making those changes in the app ahead of those things coming out. It's just like, honestly, the data that people are finding is the more realistic picture of the behavior in the app, as opposed to what what they're like promising. Like I'll say, okay, this, I remember like what I was getting at, this idea of like saying that the app wasn't for a certain audience, or like if you're building the app for collectors as opposed to for flippers, then fucking build for collectors and serve collector needs, which is they need to have stuff to collect, like put out much higher numbers so they have something to collect. Or say we're opening up, like, or do a drop that doesn't have a limit. Say we're opening it up for 24 hours, come in and buy it, so that if you want to collect it, this is your opportunity to collect it, and then it goes away. Right. That would serve collectors way more than we're doing a small number so that they drive up in value. Because you can't say you're trying to serve collectors, but continue to serve flippers.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like, there's a lot of different like cooks in the kitchen right now that are all trying to make different recipes, and that's what's kind of making everybody kind of confused, right? It's like and I think it's like because they may be trying to appeal to a larger market, but like you said, if it's purely a collecting app, then it should by design have a different strategy, right?
Yeah, it's like make that clear. Also, I mean, and you I would argue the lap of cash out is probably their strongest indicator that they serve collectors, because the collector doesn't need to
cash out.
Like, geez, by the way, I'm full on into, I'm just now a disgruntled fan, and I'm not meaning to go that route. Like, this is not me. This is very much me wearing I'm now just a fan who uses the app as opposed to the dev thing. But that is like my perspective on it. It's like, I think you have to decide who you're trying to serve. And here's the other thing. You could also say you're trying to serve both audiences, but make it clear when you're doing one or the other, or don't flip-flop without telling, or expand the team so you can serve both at the same time. Cause that's also doable. Like you could say, hey, this drop we're going to have, or one thing like the blind box is an example. Have a uncapped mint, so that's open for 24 hours for people who want to buy it because they just like the character. Have a capped mint for like the ultra rares that is just for the people that want to like hold it, like the collector. You know what I mean? That's like one for collectors, one for flippers, and maybe collectors don't like that, and so then learn from what the collectors actually want and build something new to serve that. Like I said it, then immediately like, well, if I'm a collector, I probably don't want that. But like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, think about how you can serve both audiences at the same time with the limited resources that you have. And if you can't, choose the audience you want to focus on and hyper focus on serving them, but don't keep switching back and forth, because you just leave both audience feeling like they're kind of underserved. Right. Interesting. Yeah. And I think that's another point that I alluded to earlier, was like the scalability. And I think that's why a lot of people presume they were getting acquired, because they're like, oh my gosh, there's not that many people on the team. But like, I was looking at Recur and I was like, man, there's so many jobs, right? So I think you're not going to get acquired. Well, everyone was making fun of me. I didn't start that rumor, by the way, but I was like, let me play into this a little bit. I mean, they're not going to get acquired. I don't think it's the right direction for the product. And also, who's going to buy them? Like that's from a number of angles. Like, I think people are like saying Disney's going to buy them. If you're Disney, the value of the app is that it's not Disney, is that it kind of has everybody on it. Like, you kind of buy it and then you kind of lose that, because immediately everybody's going to go build their own version of it. Right. That's like my takeaway on it. Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Well, dude, man, listen, first of all, thanks so much for coming. I think I told you before, I sent Trevor an invite on like Tuesday, and I sent him the link, and I was like, I hope maybe he was going to show up, maybe he won't. And I was like, man, I'm being honest. I know you're a busy dude and you're pretty high up there. So I really appreciate you coming and sharing your insight with me. And I learned a lot today. A lot of times I kind of see things from a collector's perspective. So I don't have that technical application. I don't really understand what's happening behind the scenes. So it's really nice to see your whole take on it. So I think the community is really going to enjoy this. And where can people find you? Like, maybe we can just go over Tomorrowland quickly. And then, I know you're on Twitter, but maybe you're also on like other channels, but I think Twitter is predominantly where people can find you. I think, right now, Twitter is where you can find me. I'm at BC_Trevor. BC Trevor. Trevor makes content. I think most people in here know who I am. But probably also, everybody. Not everybody. But also, please go and follow at Tomorrowland NFT. I link it right at the top of my Twitter, so it's pretty easy to find. They are awesome. The mint is live right now on FTX, so you can buy it right now. We're going to have a shitload of stuff announcing over the coming weeks and months leading up to Tomorrowland Belgium. And I think we're going to do something that's going to be pretty we have some stuff in the works that's pretty mind-blowing to people, not just in terms of the value that we're delivering, but also kind of like setting a whole new future for like Tomorrowland as a music festival, and hopefully becoming like setting the future of music festivals. Like that's what we're really trying to do here. And I hope everybody will join us and be a part of it, because it's fun. And yeah, it's like it's a cool company.
Very cool stuff. It kind of reminds me of like almost like how Veve kind of started the licensed NFTs. It's like, well, the same thing with electric music festivals. It's like Tomorrowland starting that whole genre off, right? So it's kind of neat how early we are in this space. I know I keep saying it, but I really do think that, you know, what we were talking about.
We really are.
Yeah, like, we're early, man.
You can't overstate it, because it's like the tech is still in active development while it's in flight and usable now, and it's very rare that you actually get to play around with something that early in its development. So that's like pretty cool.
So cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, hey man, listen, thanks so much for coming on. Means a lot to me. And yeah, let's do this again sometime. Maybe in 6 months we'll get an update, see where Tomorrowland's at. And yeah, I
think there's going to be, if we do 6 months, there's going to be a shitload to talk about.
Okay, maybe I'll see you in a week then.
Okay. No, but I'm saying like, if all of the stuff that I'm working on, if it all comes together, like the shit's going to be pretty hype. Like this, like August, September this year is going to be a pretty cool time. So yeah, looking forward to that.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks so much, Trevor.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Take care, buddy.
Talk to you soon.